Started off with this gun, although it's gone through a number of iterations to get where it is here. Basically, when you're low on ammo, this lights up. I'll explain a bit more about it and then I'll show the insides of how it's working. So obviously at the time of shooting this video, dart counters are available. They don't know if you put in a partially loaded mag, and you have to tell them how many the mag contains anyway, and then they're kind of big. I started this before anyone was selling those kits too, so there was just a few people doing them by themselves. I remember seeing one where someone had put magnets, I think, up in their magazine, and there were hall sensors up in the gun that read that code of north and south poles, like a binary code, and from that it could establish what capacity the mag had. But that's still got the same issue where it doesn't know if it's a partially full one. I had a few other ideas, but most of them were way too complex and involved heavy modifications to the magazines. Like one idea I had was the way that these operate. You'd probably think that there's some sort of a roller on the inside that counts how many times it's rolled along. That's not actually the case. What happens is it's there are strips that go along under here and it's basically reading capacitance. That's how it knows how far along it is. Thought of building something in there like that, and maybe not with capacitance, maybe resistance, just some sort of resistive material going along, and then something on the follower that would slide and then have contacts at the top that get read by the gun, so it would know how far down that was and therefore how many darts were left. As I said, way too complex. So I went with just a reload warning where the light comes on when you have a certain number of darts left. And I think that's a really good compromise. Another huge advantage of the way I've done it is that the magazines require little to no modification. I'll get back into that later. Let's have a look at how it works. Because this is pump action, I decided that it would only need to warn you when you're chambering your last shot. You probably don't need any more warning than that just because of the rate of fire. So I'll give it a demonstration. 2 darts here, blue one is the last one. The light's off right now because I used the mag switch, so it doesn't waste power when there's no mag in, but if I push the switch manually, it's now saying there's no ammo left. So when I slide this in, it won't come on. So that's up in the chamber, flip forward. Has a little flash just because stuff was moving around. The sensor's quite sensitive. Lets you know it's still working. Okay, racking that. Up pops the dart, and now there are none left in the magazine except for this one. So as you're pumping, it says this is your last shot. Cool, I'll get my next mag ready. And of course, no change. Follower's still in the same place. Follower's still in the same place. And so the same would apply if you happen to put in a magazine that only has one left. Tells you you've only got one left. The warning means you have 1 or 0 shots remaining. Okay, let's take a peek up her skirt and see what's going on in there. First thing to worry about is this wire connecting the 2 sides. Now there's actually just about nothing going on in that half of the shell. It's all on the left side. Mostly on the left side. So here's the main circuit. It was actually salvaged from something like a printer many years ago, far too long ago for me to remember what. And it was basically a circuit that already did what I needed with associated transmitter and sensor. Which one's which? I can't remember because they both look the same. That makes it tricky to work with infrared components like this. Yeah, so the circuit already did what I want, and I reverse engineered it for later ones. And then to avoid wasting power, both this one and the infrared transmitter, which actually is driven by quite a high current, I put a little switch in here. So the very first version used this little leaf spring that you can see underneath. There's a little thin bit of metal there, and then under this there's another one. There's a little plastic knob which kicked out into this area, so when the magazine came and sliding past, pushed that into there and they touched. It was just too flimsy and broke pretty quickly. So then I got some old wire. It was actually the spiral binding of a spiral bound notepad, and I bent it to a pretty little shape. Fits just in there, and now when the magazine comes past, pushes that over. You can see when I push this, the light comes on. That's just completing the circuit from the battery. That was the first evolution. The second evolution was over at this end. So I initially had 2 coin cells, just some 2032s, and they ran out really quickly. And then just recently I had another go at this, and I got a really cheap DIY power bank circuit from eBay. Well, it was actually a whole power bank. You just put in your own 18650 battery, and I just pulled the circuit out of that, and then got this little 1-cell LiPo. If there's no drain for a while, then it shuts down into a really low power mode. How low? I don't know. I haven't measured anything. I just have to trust it, I guess. This big USB socket isn't even visible from the outside. Just aligned it so that it's tucked on the inside, and then you can just get to this one to recharge. So that technically still works. I could charge a phone off that. Not for long though. So yes, with the issue of batteries running out and having to open up the entire gun to replace them, or deal to that, I figured it needs to be rechargeable from the outside. And so the obvious solution to that is just charging it off a phone charger when it's all closed up. So when it's operating, what is happening is one of these transmits a beam, effectively a beam. It's a very narrowly focused bit of light, not like a laser or anything. Shines some infrared light, so can't see it with the naked eye, and then the other one receives that. And if the receiver doesn't see any infrared, then it's happy. But if it does see some, then it lights up this. Infrared can shine through the plastic shell. It would be advisable to use some thick black paint around these on the inside. That's if you're not going to do a paint job. Or if you don't use them outside, then it's not going to affect you. It's mainly the sunlight. So we're relying on the darts and the follower blocking the infrared light. So it can happily shine through the transparent plastic here, but it can't really shine through the orange plastic of the follower. It's double thickness, of course, because it's on the other side as well. Now this can be applied to different guns. I've got various different iterations of this. Most of them are unfinished, but I can still demonstrate them. So here is a work in progress Rapidstrike. Custom circuit. Okay, this is the replacement one. That's the original one. This is version 3. Not what the video is about. Here is the sensor. Now it's really easy. This and the Raven, and I'm not sure about what else. They've got this little thing here which makes it really easy to mount a sensor there and a sensor there. Now I've got these much further down in the Alpha Trooper, they're up here somewhere. What this means is that it warns you when you have 4 or fewer darts remaining. These can just see past the follower. So that's when the light would light up for a really fast rate of fire. I figured 4 was a good amount. The Stryfe is slightly trickier, slightly messier, because the LED and receiver have to be on the outside. I've just got tape over this to block out ambient light, because of course that'll pick up a lot of infrared through the back of it and get confused. That really would need a bunch of epoxy putty over it. Epoxy putty. And this is running off 3 IMRs and through a custom circuit board that's got this plus MOSFET for the motors. And this transmitter plus the reload light back here, they are only turned on, that part of the circuit's only active when the magazine switch is pressed on the inside, so you can save power just by dropping the mag out. If one wanted to have a magazine in for extended periods of time, like if this was your secondary for HVZ, then you would want to probably wire it into the rev switch, so you only get a reload warning when you are revving rather than any time there's a magazine in. And so I set this up so that it warns for 2 or fewer shots. I thought that was best for a semi-automatic, and that meant that the centre of it is 30 mils off the bottom, which is 1.21 inches for all you historians. This also incidentally has a white LED on the switch for the door there, so you could clear jams at night. So I've got a mag here with 3 darts in, so now if I shoot one, there's the light come on. So if you wanted a warning at 3, you just have to shift these 2 down a bit, I guess it's 12 millimeters. And then if you wanted a warning at 4, it would need to be right down on this edge here. Essentially the same as where the Rapidstrike one is. And my beloved Fusefires get some love. I just hacked in an early version of a Stryfe circuit in here, just using the reload warning part of it, running 3 rechargeable nickel metal hydride batteries, and you can see both the lights on the top come on, plus the UV on the inside. And I tapped into just this back one so that that would come on when you chamber your last disc. So if I put my finger in here and block the sensors, you see it goes off. So I can demonstrate this. There's 1, there's 2. So I can prime it once, fire. That light always comes on between discs because of where the sensors are positioned. And the last one, and it stays on. Now this beam isn't in an ideal position. It would be better to have them set up so that the beam is blocked by the follower, just like with the magazines, rather than just being blocked by the last disc. So let's talk about the magazines for a bit. Now before I said they require little to no modification. This is an example of one that requires no modification. You've got the clear section that the beam needs to go through, and then the opaque follower that needs to stop the beam. This is an example of one that needs the most amount of modification. So it's got a slit down this side, which is nice. This hole in the front doesn't need to be drilled actually. But you need somewhere for it to come out the other side. So just drill a hole through there. Doesn't really matter how big, it depends. It's all going to depend on how you install your sensor, your infrared beam. So there's a follower blocking the beam, and there it is open. If I was going to use it on my Stryfe and Rapidstrike, then I'd need extra holes for where those are. You can see with this one I did do holes for various different numbers of darts, or just cut to the chase and cut a whole slit out of there that matches this side. This I haven't touched, but it looks like it's just the same deal. And this 12 here, excuse the crudity of my jungleizing. The pen marks are just other ideas that I was testing early on before I settled on the infrared beam one. So this one would work fine. The opaque side over the other side has a slit down the back, the follower is opaque, and then this side is clear, so this does not need modification at all. Flip over to one of these hideous knockoff 12 round darts which only fit 11. Here's one by itself. This is two clear sides, which is good. However, the follower is also clear, so that's bad. The darts would still block the beam, but the follower doesn't. So put in the Rapidstrike, which is set to warn for 4 or fewer darts. Right now, you would actually get a warning at 6 or fewer. That's fine. Way to fix it properly though would be take it all apart, paint the inside of the follower, and then put it all back together. Paint it black or something. That should stop the light. These are pretty stiff springs. This has wires going down this groove here, but coincidentally I designed it with the sensor being at the front of the mag, so the slit you would need to cut would be down here, and that would be fine. This would be totally possible, but I don't feel like doing that to a Firefly mag. Here's a 6 with a clear side, slit down the other side, so that's fine. 25 from a Hyperfire. I haven't played with it, but that's just going to need a slit, and I think the follower, although it's completely different from normal ones, it's roughly the same height. So I think that would probably work perfectly well. There's an extra little thing down there, but I don't think that would block the beam. You need a slit there and then knock out the sections between those. Kind of like I did with this. This was also early in the design phase, so I've knocked out one of those and it's clear on the other side. Working mags are tricky. The infrared can go through this. It's only semi-transparent black. Unfortunately, the follower is also the same plastic that the infrared can go through, so same deal, paint the inside of the follower or deal with the fact that it warns at the wrong time. And you might be wondering if this can be done with Vortex magazines. The answer is hell yes. No modification needed. Beam goes straight through that slit and out the other side. Same deal. Follower and discs block the light, and that applies to these big ones as well. And obviously if you put in a mag that doesn't have the appropriate holes cut out where necessary, then that's fine. It just doesn't warn you when you're low on ammo. Just back to normal, no loss there. When you're trying to troubleshoot this, it can be handy if you've got something that can see infrared, and I use this homemade night vision viewer sort of thing. It's got a black and white camera tacked on there, and it's the viewfinder of an old video camera with a little screen in there. So I'll see if I can demonstrate what it looks like. In the center of the screen you can see the infrared transmitter, and then when I click the switch, there you can just see the faint glow of that shining. And that's enough to know if it's working or not. Here is the circuit in its simplest form. So over here we've got the battery. All these values are calculated for a 3S LiPo or anything lithium, so 3 IMRs in this case. And we've got the magazine switch here, which as I said earlier could be the rev switch if you wanted. Then we got the infrared LED, which is the LED 1, and then photo transistor, that's the sensor for that, infrared receiver. And then LED 2 is the actual reload warning LED. And a transistor and a few associated resistors. So this circuit is basically designed into 3 sections, kind of 3 vertical sections here. So on the left we've got the infrared LED that shines the beam through the magazine, and an associated resistor that just limits the current so that LED doesn't burn out. And then in the middle sort of column we've got photo transistor, which is going to be sensing the infrared beam, and this R3 resistor which pulls the NPN transistor down to ground. Third column is LED 2 and R4, which is also just limiting current. That one's stopping LED 2 from burning out. And then down through the NPN transistor. And that's what's going to turn the reload warning light on and off. So what happens when it's working is obviously you close the mag switch. Power goes down through LED 1, through its resistor, and that starts shining. Now, if the phototransistor can't see the light, then it doesn't conduct any power. That means that R3 is pulling the NPN transistor down to ground, so it's making sure that it's not switched on. So it's effectively connecting the base pin 1 from the NPN transistor down through to the negative of the battery. Now, when the phototransistor can see infrared, it turns on. That allows current to go through the phototransistor and then across through R2 into the base of the NPN transistor, and that turns that transistor on. That allows current to flow through LED 2, through R4, through the NPN transistor and down. And that's it. It's simple as that. In more recent designs I've used an Arduino for this, which has a few advantages, primarily that the LED switches solidly on and off. It doesn't sort of fade on or fade off, which you might have noticed this one does. But the Arduino based circuit probably warrants a whole video of its own. I don't remember exactly how I came to each value, but 2.2K looks quite high for R4. I would have thought that would be a lower resistance, so maybe the particular LED I was using can only handle a really low current. Now if you need to make this more sensitive, you just want to replace R3. A variable resistor could help here. Increasing the value will cause the phototransistor to be more sensitive, and decreasing it will cause it to be less sensitive. So if you're getting issues with ambient light triggering the sensor, then you want to decrease that R3 value. You'd want to increase or decrease that value in multiples of 10k ohms at least. And after sitting through such a long video, I'm sure everybody is dying for a firing demo.